Welcome to my studio tour. I am beyond excited to show you my small space as I think it will be useful for any artist to watch. I have spent many hours of research and trial and error to achieve a productive and comfortable working studio for my art business needs. This video will take you into detail about what I have in my studio and what way it's set up to enable me to draw, paint and run an art business effectively. I think that many sections of this video will give you a lot of useful tips, so I hope you enjoy the tour. So in a nutshell, before I get started on the tour, I've moved my studio around about 100 times or so to allow for as much space as possible while still being able to store and function as I need. Along the way, I have also found some handy tricks to make being an artist easier and a lot more comfortable. I can also share some great equipment recommendations that have worked perfect for me and my art business. I think this is so important as us self-employed artists that work from home need to enjoy the many hours in our studios as much as possible. So if you're looking for storage or layout advice, or even how to be more comfortable while drawing or painting, I've got you covered. So as we enter my studio, you'll immediately notice the large single side window here. Initially, I aim to maximize the lights coming through, capturing photos and filming during the brightest moments of the day for the best lighting. I now actually block the sunlight with a blackout blind and instead get constant high quality light from my brilliant studio lights, which I'll talk more about in the next section. Under the window is also the spot where I keep my spare sheets of cardboard and foam board that are ready and easily accessible, mainly to use for packaging and drawing boards, which I'll also talk about very soon. In the summer, the studio gets quite hot, so this portable aircon has been an absolute lifesaver. Out of everything in the studio, this AC unit is definitely an out of place eyesore, but I don't really mind as without it I would be very hot and uncomfortable. I think it fits well in the space that it's in, so that's a positive, and again, it's all about being as comfortable as possible so that I can be productive as possible. Behind the AC and near to my cut-in mat area, I have a peg wall here which I purchased from IKEA to hold my main used tapes, pens, scissors, utility knife blades, etc. I simply have it in a nearby accessible place for when I need to do things, such as pack originals and prints. IKEA have a ton of great storage solutions, so I highly recommend checking out their websites for ideas. I can comfortably say that these studio lights are one of the best purchases I've made. They offer natural looking bright light 24/7 whenever I need it. I can easily turn the dials on the back here, or there is also a wireless remote I can use, which is very handy. So I started with this one and I loved it so much that I got another one over here. This is so that I can have 2 points of light in the studio so it's more even, which creates more of a softer look on video. It also allows me to utilize even more light, which allows my camera to pick up as much detail as possible. This newer light, however, is a slightly upgraded version where I can actually change the color temperature of the light, which is ideal for things such as white balance. Remember I previously mentioned about how the blackout blinds keep the ever-changing sunlight out? Well, this is important as with these lights I'm able to configure my camera settings to perfectly match the tone and exposure of these lights. And this makes sure that I get the correct colours and exposures constantly for any videos or photos at any time of day or night. With ever-changing sunlight coming through the window, both in terms of brightness and the colour of the light, the camera settings would have to keep changing, which creates just more work. I've positioned both of the lights to bounce off the white walls and meet diffused at my French Cleat wall where I create all of my artworks. I'll leave a link to my exact lights in the description if you'd also like to find the same lights or something similar. So I get asked about this all the time on my social media, and this is my French Cleat wall where I create all of my artworks. You can think of it as a giant easel that enables me to hook my drawings onto. I ordered my French Cleat slats on eBay, but I know you can also purchase them through Etsy, and they work by holding onto one another. If we take a look to the side here, you can see that all the cleats on my wall are facing up. I can then screw or tape a cleat slat facing down onto a drawing board and then hook this onto the cleats of my wall which are all facing up. You can see how easily snug and secure this keeps my boards to the wall. The boards can then be moved side to side and up and down and so on. This has enabled me to really open up the space in my studio, eliminating a need for large tilted desks or easels. I tried a few easels and on top of taking up a lot of space, they always managed to shake and buckle, which was annoying. I started my business by using a tilted desk, but it wasn't a perfect fit. The desk took up a lot of precious room and also limited the size of the artworks that I could create. I found that the desk made it hard to reach the tops of large artworks, and even larger artworks wouldn't even fit on the desk at all. This isn't an issue with the French cleat wall setup, however. I can go as big as the wall will allow me and stand or move the board up and down to reach any areas if I wish. It's also a lot easier to position the camera and film an artwork that's vertical as opposed to on a desk. Furthermore, a vertical position will eliminate any distortion seen on the camera as opposed to a tilted view. And if I don't have any wooden boards that are a good fit for the artworks on my wall easel, I can cut custom sized foam board sheets which are perfect as they're lightweight but sturdy. Working upright on this wall has also meant that I have been able to stand back and look at my artwork in full view. While doing so, I can also easily compare it to the reference photo on my iPad. My iPad is positioned to the right here and I'll talk about it more in a little bit. This is a vital step for me when drawing realistically, as standing back and looking at a piece in its entirety is very helpful to see what is and isn't working. And just in case you're curious, this is the finished tiger artwork from the future. The drawing tutorial for this portrait is now available on my Patreon channel. For a little background, I first measured out the placements on the wall and then screwed the French cleat slats evenly apart. Once they were in place, I then painted them white to match the wall. I quickly realised that the colours of my artworks often look washed out against a white background, especially on camera, so I painted the whole area this very dark brown colour. I noticed a huge difference when viewing my artworks against a darker background compared to a lighter one. This could be something to take into consideration for your setup too. What's more is that this cleat wall allows for this hand rest tool. It works a bit like a mile stick by keeping my hand or my wrist off of the artwork. This helps by not smudging whatever I'm working on, but also when I'm working on the fine details. It really helps to have my hand resting just a few centimeters off the paper so that I can clearly see what I'm working on. So I custom made this hand rest stick by gluing together pieces of leftover French cleat slats, and it has been an absolute game changer for me and my artworks. You can see at the ends it can hook onto any of the slats on my wall, but I usually just leave it in this top one here. It has also helped to eliminate any shoulder and back pain I used to get when drawing, especially when sat down. I'll talk more about how this stick, paired with my chair, enables me to be very comfortable for many hours in a second. And lastly, as long as you slot a French cleat in to hook onto the wall, you can let your imagination run wild and stick almost anything to it. Here I have a tea tray which I can attach to the wall, and this just allows me to put any materials I'm using right next to where I'm working. Having to move away and reach for materials can be distracting and break the flow, so this has been a very handy piece of kit for me. As I work at the cleat wall, I do stand some of the time, but most of the time I'm actually sat in this chair. It's a second-hand desk chair, and to start with, I've removed the armrest and I've replaced the wheels with bell glides to stop it from rolling all over the place. And this here is the best edition of the chair. So after taking off the armrests as mentioned, I fitted this sturdy keyboard stand mount to act as a dynamic armrest. It's fitted to the base and comes around the chair, able to move and be customized in many different positions to be exactly where you need it. If you're an artist who draws or paints for many hours, you may notice how easy it is to get back, neck and shoulder pain. I can tell you now that this chair and keyboard mount setup has completely solved that for me. I'll list the one I used in the description for this video. I'm able to move it into positions that are personally comfortable for me and then fix it into place. It's very sturdy and offers extreme stability for my arm when working. This paired with my handrest stick is an absolute dream team when it comes to comfort. My posture has improved and I no longer ache for many hours of drawing. I'll show you an example of how I use it here. I'm not going crazy, there's no artwork here, but this is just to demonstrate how I use the chair and keyboard mount armrest. I'm able to sit back in the chair with my elbow resting and then my arm is in a perfect position to draw or paint. You'll also notice how my pencil drawers are easily accessible next to me, which I'll talk about in a second. The keyboard mount is very sturdy but also easy to move, so getting in and out of the chair is hassle free. As mentioned, paired with my hand rest stick, I'm able to sit in maximum comfort and create the detailed artwork that I love for many hours. I can easily move the drawing board, the handrest tool and the keyboard mount into many different positions to reach every square inch of the drawing that I need to. To look at my reference photos, I have my iPad Pro right next to my Cleat wall so that I can easily see my images. This is important as I don't have to keep turning my neck a lot, for example, if it was far away, and the closer it is, the quicker and easier I can compare my artwork with the reference image. So to hold the iPad in place, I actually screwed a handrail I ordered from eBay to the wall, which I can then clamp it to by using a magic arm. If you're confused about any of the equipment, I'll leave all the links below. I can then also move the iPad up and down the length of the bar and then tighten the clamp where I need it to be, which is particularly useful for when I go from sitting to standing or vice versa. I just absolutely love this setup for my small space, as I used to use a light stand to hold my iPad, but it would always get in the way. As you can see, this is a much more convenient and hassle-free way to have my iPad next to where I work. The iPad Pro was definitely an investment, but I chose to splash out on it as the screen is of incredible quality, it shows deep rich colours and also gets quite bright. It has the added bonus of being a great piece of technology too, so I can use it for digital art whenever and if I feel like it. What sold me the most to purchase this iPad over just printing out my references was the ability to zoom in close on details. When I draw or paint detailed work, I make sure to zoom in as much as possible so I can completely and easily see what's going on. The camera I use for all of my content is the Lumix S5 with the 20 to 60mm lens. If you're starting to purchase expensive items for your studio, such as a good quality camera, I highly recommend looking for the monthly payment options on Amazon. They are zero interest for either 5 to 12 months, which is what I did. Attached to my camera I have a small Rode microphone which picks up all of the clear sounds when creating artworks, especially the soft pastels, which I love. I've owned two previous professional cameras, but they weren't able to deliver the quality that I desired. Despite the costly investment, the Lumix S5 has proven to be a worthwhile purchase for me, offering exceptional quality and features at a relatively affordable price for its level. To hold my camera I use this newer light stand. It's height adjustable and the legs can expand out quite far, which is great to make it extra sturdy. On the top fixture I have a magic arm for all those angles and also a quick release plate. This quick release plate matches with the fixture on the bottom of my camera, which allows me to easily attach and remove my camera as I please. For me this is very useful, as in the past I would have to turn my camera physically multiple times to screw it on and then I would dread taking it back off again. Now I just pop it on and off when needed. To store my soft pastel sticks and pencils, I use these large flat trays called Complement from IKEA. They're actually designed to fit into IKEA wardrobes to hold items such as jewellery or shoes. You can probably see that it's a bit of a DIY job because they're not designed to be standalone drawers, but I really just wanted large tray drawers which were near impossible to find. I bought the two wooden sides and a bunch of drawers to go in between, and it's been perfect for what I need. So the top drawer here is uncovered and easy for me to access and just holds whatever I'm specifically using for my current artwork. Here is where I usually keep my pastel box lids to store the pastel sticks and pencils, and also where my soft sponge tools are with a bunch of replacements. Each drawer sits on little wheels, so they're easy to pull out, and I have them right next to where I work so I can easily access any specific stick or pencil as I'm drawing. So if I begin to pull them out, you can see that I have organised the trays into similar colour groups, split between pastel sticks and pencils. Where each pastel sits, I installed sponge foam to stop them from rolling around and then foam board separators for the various sections. Keeping my materials organised like this has been so important for my productivity. Previously, I often skipped using certain colours or shades simply because I couldn't find it, and sometimes spent too long looking for specific pencils or sticks. This is no longer much of an issue with these trays. The whole setup is designed to allow me to work as stress-free as possible, and having these organised tray drawers next to where I work has been super helpful. If you're familiar with my other videos, you'll already know what pastel products I love to use. If not, for pastel sticks, I always stick to either Unison Colour or Schmieke, and for the pencils, I use a mixture of Carbothello, Faber-Castell, Durant, Caran d'Ache and Bruynzeel. I actually have a long in-depth FAQ post on my Patreon which goes into detail about each brand and their benefits if you'd like to check that out. I'll leave a link to that in the description. I actually have an excess of drawers, so the bottom ones are useful to contain things such as fine art printer paper, prints and other pieces. Before moving on to the next section, here's a quick tip if you're also a soft pastel artist. Gather a sheet of foam board and tape down strips of sandpaper. You can then easily sharpen your pastel pencil tips to a point when you need to do detailed work. Like my camera, another incredibly important purchase for my art business has been my PC and monitor. I spend so much time editing videos and photos for social media, YouTube and Patreon that I knew I needed an upgrade to improve my workflow. Again, I saved up and invested in this kit with the aim to last me many years. The monitor I use is the HP Omen 27U, and I couldn't recommend it enough for those editing high definition videos and photos. For what it offers and the professional sleek look, it's definitely worth the money in my opinion. Having the ability to see the detail in 4K and the accurate colours has been an absolute game changer for me. So after going through many keyboards and mice, I've settled very well with the ones I have now. This is the Razer Huntsman keyboard, which I'm really enjoying. It's really comfortable to type on and it's fun to customize the lighting. The mouse I use is the Endgame XM1R and it's also very high quality. As you may or may not know, I do a lot of voiceover content for tutorial videos, and this mic has been an absolute joy to work with. If you need a compact high quality plug-in microphone, I can safely recommend the Rode NT USB Mini. For my sound, I just use an Amazon Alexa Studio which can plug into my PC. I also love having an Alexa in the studio because when I'm sat down ready to draw, I can just shout over and begin playing or changing a song or podcast, which I find very convenient. And lastly here I have this Tascam lavalier mic which comes in this lovely pouch, and this is a portable microphone which is perfect for high quality audio. Especially useful for when you're talking as you're drawing, for example, or recording your face as you talk without having a big microphone out of shot nearby. It's surprising how good the mic sounds for such a small size. I'm not saying you need to spend a lot on any equipment at all. This is simply what I've purchased and that I can recommend works well for my art business workflow. Underneath my PC desk is where my Canon Pro-1000 printer lives. This incredible printer was very kindly gifted to me by my grandma for my birthday, and it's about the only thing in my studio that I haven't purchased myself. It's a large A2 fine art printer that allows me to create my own very high quality prints straight from the studio. Creating prints, I would say, is more of a hobby to me. Most artists I know outsource the printmaking to a company, which I also think is a great idea, but I've always wanted to print my own and have the full creative experience and control over what I put out to my customers. The printer is definitely a long-term investment, and for any artist considering getting one, I will warn you that it can take a lot of extra work if you sell well. You may find yourself printing, packaging and shipping prints for many hours instead of drawing or painting. However, I'll always be so incredibly grateful for each and every print order I receive. I would say that there's nothing quite like planning an artwork idea, seeing it come to life and then creating the fine art prints to ship to customers all over the world, which is why I love this printer so much. There's no real aesthetically pleasing way to show you these shelves, as every studio has a messy corner, and these shelves are definitely that messy place for me. This is a photo of how they look without all of the stuff on, and I love the industrial look which matches a lot of the furniture in my studio. They are probably one of the first purchases I made for this room, and that was during the first COVID lockdown here in the UK. So at the top I have these metal paper shelves where I store anything from normal A4 printer paper, shipping label pouches, transfer paper, linen texture cardstock for my certificates, and so on. The metal trays here have been really great at expanding the space at the top shelf, allowing me to store and organise even more. Gone are the days where I used to pile everything on top of one another. Here I also store cut-offs of pastel matte board, which I use to colour swatch as I create new pieces. On the shelf below I have more drawers here that store more odd things such as pens, pencil extenders, SD card readers, erasers, and so on. But before I show you that, you'll see this large container on the top with the blue lid, and this is actually where I keep my oil painting palette. If you're an oil painter looking to keep your active paints safe and to slow their drying time considerably, I can't recommend this container enough. It's the Masterson 12 by 16 inch artist palette seal. It has an airtight lid, and if I open it up, inside you can see I have a glass palette. This is the 30 by 40 centimeter glass palette from Jackson's Art, and I've taped some grey paper underneath it. This is so that when I mix my colours on the palette, it's much easier to see the correct tones and values when they sit on a grey surface compared to a white one. You'll know if you mix on a white palette, then all the colours automatically look darker in comparison to the white. Once I'm done painting for the day, I can pop this container in the fridge to stop the paints from drying out any further, and then continue to work with the oil paints the very next day. If, like me, you've left this palette and the paint on it for months and now it's all dry, scraping and cleaning a glass palette is much easier than other types of palettes. These small wooden drawers here are actually the first set of drawers I purchased to hold my pencils. I've repurposed them to hold documents such as shipping receipts or other paper goods. As you can see, it's also where I keep the Magzoid edition that my drawing made the cover of, which I was very proud about. It's quite funny seeing the size difference of these compared to my new IKEA tray drawers. Moving on down, I have these deeper drawers which have been really handy at storing odd bits, anything from adapters, microfiber cloths, pens, kneadable erasers, and of course pencil extenders. You can never have too many pencil extenders, all pencil artists know what I mean. To the side I have more storage solutions in the form of these acrylic vertical paper holders. I use these to store scrap bits of paper or old practice artworks. It's a bit of a mixture, again another messy place that all art studios need. I think they're great for extra storage and organisation. You can see the possibilities of how much space you can have on your shelves with a bunch of these together. Here is also where I store my black gloves. I get asked about these all the time, and I wear these to keep my fingers clean from the soft pastels, but also to protect my artworks from the natural oils on my fingers. They're very inexpensive, and I bought this box a while ago, so I would recommend for any soft pastel artist to do the same for the longevity of their pieces, especially if you're selling the artworks. On the next shelf down I have my normal everyday printer here, which I use to print things such as shipping documents for commissions and other admin-y bits. I also have some promotional pieces and thank you notes that also go with my pet portrait commissions to clients. Business cards and promotional leaflets were ordered from Vistaprint, and these brown envelopes were ordered from Amazon. The bottom shelf here isn't one I go to often. I only use it to store things I want to keep but don't use. Here I store some materials and old artworks from university. It's quite fun to take it out once in a while just to see what type of artwork I was creating and how different it is from what I do now. I still have such a love for illustration styled art, and I think you can see how I always tried to push a realistic style at university, but my tutors hated it, So if you don't know, I completed an illustration course at my university, and looking back, I probably would have suited better a drawing or painting degree. My illustration degree, however, was useful in terms of visual ideas, but it didn't give me any drawing or painting skills that I've had to practice and learn on my own. Let me know in the comments if you're planning to do an art degree and what it is, or if you've already done and finished a degree, what you did and if it's helped with your career or not. I would be very interested to know. One of the most important additions to my health in the studio is the air purifier you see here. I have asthma, and as I work a lot with soft pastels, it can get quite dusty in the studio. If I'm not careful, too much of the dust in the air will start to make me cough, which obviously isn't good. The thought of all those tiny particles of pastel dust entering my lungs is not a fun one, so I invested in this very helpful air purifier. If you also work with pastels or would just like your studio to have really clean, healthy air, I highly recommend one of these. There are many other cheaper alternatives out there, but after much research, I found that this Philips model was the best one to fit my needs. It has a built-in laser that scans the air for any debris or pollutants, and I can check the real-time readings on the device itself, or I can also check the app on my phone. While it does a great job at keeping the studio air clean, it also actually raises my fears over pastel dust even more. You can see during this soft pastel drawing creation that there is dust in the air according to the app. It constantly reminds me that it's absolutely vital to also wear a respiratory mask when undertaking dusty tasks for soft pastels, such as blending with a sponge or sharpening the pencils, for example. The respiratory mask I use is the GVS P3 filtered mask, and I like it because the filters are easily replaceable. If I blow any pastel dust off my work or blend with my sponges like I'm doing here, within 20 seconds or so the air purifier at the other side of the room will ramp up in speed as it's detecting many particles in the air. Another great benefit of the French Cleat wall is that the dust tends to fall straight to the floor instead of staying on the artwork, so that takes away the temptation to blow it away. I don't actually hang too much on the studio walls, but I do have a few of these floating wall shelves. These have been really handy for the extra storage, allowing me to store tape and other packaging materials, and I just love the design and I think they fit in really well with the slightly industrial look of the other furniture in my studio. So below this top shelf I have another smaller set that holds much of my oil painting materials such as mediums, gesso and so on. I can safely recommend these stainless steel brush cleaners for any oil painters out there. They have been an absolute dream at cleaning my oil paint brushes. They have an airtight lid that locks into place, and inside you can store your brush cleaners such as mineral spirits, Gamsol, vegetable oil and so on, whatever you use. The insert here has perforated holes that you can rub your oil brushes over, and this will help to loosen the oil paint sediment from your bristles and let it fall to the bottom. So I actually have two of these, one of them containing vegetable oil and the other containing Gamsol. I find that using both one after another gives my brush that deeper clean. You can just then keep your oil or solvent in the container and just pick up the sediment at the bottom when it accumulates over time. On the very bottom shelf here I have my wax seal equipment which I custom ordered from Etsy. This gives more of a personal touch to my commission envelopes. I'll leave a link to what shop I ordered mine from in the description. I also have some string and more oil painting mediums and varnishes and so on. Moving across the wall slightly to above my PC, I have these larger floating shelves which store my oil painting brushes and some ornaments. I also just love this brush holder as it separates the brushes out so you can easily find the one that you're looking for. The bottom shelf holds brand new pastel pencils waiting to replace old colours that run out, and the other containers hold all of my graphite pencils and tools. You can see just how much less you need for graphite artworks. It's very simplified compared to soft pastels and oil paints. And to store them I use these metal mesh pencil pots. I have found them to be a good size and very handy at storing pencils, pens and painting brushes. So that's everything the floating shelves hold. If we now look to the right of them, you'll see all of my Winton oil colour paints. I have 16 tubes in total, and you can see that they're hardly used. They last so long and they're very good quality, so I just love them. I store them on this metal grid, which in itself is hooked onto the wall using these pegs that came with it. I'll leave a link to the one I bought. I then use metal clips to hold the tubes to it, and other than being a convenient way to store my paints, I also just love how bright and colourful they look on the wall. Moving to the other corner above my soft pastel drawers and next to my French Cleat wall, I also have these other smaller floating shelves. These just allow me to store a few extra things such as scrap bits of board for colour swatching, gloves and sponges, etc. As you can see, this chest of drawers is quite old. It's made from wood and has 6 semi-shallow drawers at roughly A1 size for me to store paper and artworks flat. I was able to buy it second hand for a good deal. The very top of these drawers is where I do the majority of my cutting for my pastel paper, glassine paper, cardboard and so on. I use a cutting mat placed on top of this wooden panel, and the height of these drawers is perfect for me to stand here while I do this work. The wooden board has been extremely useful at keeping the mat sturdy and allowing it to be easily moved around, such as being turned into a vertical position, hanging over the desk and still allowing me to cut, write or prepare things on it. This has proven to be very useful for me as I can't fit a large desk in this room. The mat is great because it's easy to measure things out precisely without having to make marks with a pencil on whatever I'm cutting. So here are some of the tools I keep nearby. This first one is an acrylic hand rest device that I have mentioned many times before, but it's really been a game changer for me. Back when I had a desk, I used this device to keep my hands off my work to avoid smudging. Now I use it here for when I need to keep my hand off the surface, such as transferring outlines for example. Here are the rulers I use. Both of them are metal and high quality. The first one is a lightweight 60cm Mapak ruler, and I use this for most things, such as measuring shipments or to use with a Stanley knife to cut boards or paper. The second one is a larger, more heavy duty ruler, and this is the Victor 75cm. I use this less, but it has a great non-slip padding at the bottom, so it's great to use with a Stanley knife for cutting things like cardboard. I also have this new addition, and this is the KT board trimmer. It seems like a bit of a prototype, but I'll leave a link in the description where I purchased mine. It's another all metal, really high quality ruler, which allows for a utility knife blade to be slotted into the sliding trimmer head. It works like a guillotine, but I've never seen one where you can replace the blades like this. It's more similar to using a ruler with a Stanley knife, which is what I usually do, but this ruler automatically keeps the blade right at the ruler's edge for you. I've gone through a few guillotines because you can't replace the cutting blades, and also a lot of them don't allow to cut boards as they're too thick. With this ruler I can simply keep cutting over the same line again and again without anything getting jammed, and then I can replace the utility blade when needed. If you've been following me for a while, you'll also know that I use this belt sanding machine. I use this to sharpen all of my pastel pencils, and I also use it to sharpen my graphite pencils, which is how I get those super sharp long points. Conventional sharpeners just don't work for me, so I instead opt to shave the wood casings off with a Stanley knife, and then I use this belt sander to carefully shape the tip into a sharp round or flat point, depending on what I'm using the pencil for. The size of these drawers fit up to A1, so any artworks or paper that are bigger I can conveniently store flat at the bottom on the floor, or for things that can stand upright such as foam board or cardboard, I store upright behind the drawers against the wall. The very top drawer contains acid-free plastic sleeves to store completed artworks, and then I have a grey board that separates the glassine paper underneath. Glassine paper is used when covering your artworks to keep the drawings smudge-free, especially soft pastel artworks. I've basically set the drawers up in terms of steps for portrait commissioning, so as we come down, this next drawer holds all of my pastel matte board paper. On top here we have my favourite and most used, which is the dark grey colour. And then underneath another sheet of grey board that I can lift up, I have all of the brown boards that I also like to use underneath. I found that it's made my life a lot easier to separate and organise the paper into sections like this. The sheets are also pre-cut into common commission sizes, so that when I get an order, I can just pull out what I need and get to work as soon as possible. So then the next drawer down is where I store all of my commissions that have already been sketched out and are waiting to be drawn. Pastel mat board is quite sturdy and robust, but it's still important to store it flat. This will help to not only keep the paper or board flat, but to keep it safe from getting any knocks or marks, as sometimes the pieces can be waiting here for a whole year to be drawn depending on when it's booked for in my schedule. Separated by grey board again, underneath these is large sheets of acid-free tissue paper, which I often use to wrap up my artworks and prints for shipping. These large sheets are really useful, so I'll leave a link below where I get mine from if you're also looking for something similar too. The drawer below this one is where I store most of my finished original artworks. It's important to me to store them flat for reasons already mentioned, and I like having a drawer specifically for them to keep them safe. Many of them are from Patreon, created for tutorials and real-time videos. This is a new graphite tutorial I recently finished of long flowing hair, and I loved creating this one. The tutorial is going on my Patreon very soon, so by the time you're watching this, it's probably already available to start learning from. This Barbary monkey portrait was also created from a Patreon video, and I'll just show you here how I store my soft pastel artworks. You can see that all the pieces are in acid-free plastic sleeves to keep them safe, but also to stop them from smudging, I put a sheet of glassine paper on top like this. If you can't get the plastic sleeves, you can just tape on the glassine paper, covering the drawing and over the sides, and it should stay protected. The drawer below this one contains odds and sods such as shipping materials, certificate of authenticity stickers and the stamp, etc. Nothing too exciting. I make my certificate holders out of black card and stick the certificates to it using sticky picture corners. It's a very affordable but presentable way for your clients to keep their certificates safe. And the very bottom drawer contains some of the mounts that I have previously bulk bought for prints and smaller originals. Thank you for watching my studio tour. I really hope that some of the information in this video was useful and can help you with your setup too. I would love to hear in the comments if you liked any part of my studio in particular or areas where you think I can improve. Feel free to check the description for any important information and to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next one.